IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
One of the core things all brands require, especially to kind of build a strong and long relationship with their consumers, is trust. And oftentimes, we talk about the product, we talk about, giving value, we talk about so many things, but we don't talk enough about trust. And brands will kind of start off with that foundational need to say, I'm going to focus on trust. I'm going to focus on what I stand for as a philosophy, as a brand. In many ways, functions so differently. One such brand in the Indian market is the Whole Truth Foods. And I have their founder and CEO, Shashank Mehta, on the show today to talk about the journey of this brand, how he started off, how it's kind of gone ahead. But more than anything else, to understand how do you build a brand with the core central theme of trust and really grow it, build it, and let that philosophy seep in, not just from the consumer side, but also how you function internally as an organization. More on that in this episode of Advertising is Dead. I'm Varun Duggirala. Right back with Shashank Mehta.
Do you wonder why China does the things that it does? Or want to know how we could improve online privacy? Or perhaps you're thinking about how we can kickstart India's economy. If you'd like to search for the answers to such questions, check out All Things Policy, a daily public policy podcast that covers everything from employment figures to aircraft carriers. Tune in from Monday to Friday for new episodes and fresh takes.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're finally doing an in-studio episode after feels like a different lifetime. 2020, I think maybe March is when I did my last in-studio episode recording. So, Shashank, you're the first one after I don't know how many years after I grew my hair back to be in studio with me.
I wish I can say that at some point of time, but thank you for having me as the comeback kid in the physical world, and thank you so much for doing this in the physical world. I'm done with Zoom calls, so this is great.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting parts of I think it's good we're doing this in person as well, because you and I have spoken many times in the past about, I think, at different stages of you building what I feel is a very unique brand in the entire space, right? Because you started off from a core philosophy and a core reason. But I want to start off saying, although the name is very clear as to what it is, was that the name you had in mind when you started off? Was Whole Truth Foods what you always wanted to call it? Or did you start off with more brandy names, brandish names?
Actually, there is some history to this. So some of the listeners might know, when we started off, we were called And Nothing Else. We are a 27-month-old brand now. For the first 8 months of our existence, we were called And Nothing Else. Because the starting thought of the brand was, why is it that food companies have been getting away with lying, and there is no softer, easier word for this. They've just been lying to us for about 50 odd years now. Why are they getting away with it? Why do they get to put beautiful women and drippy chocolate on the front of a packet and not tell me what's gone into my food, right? So the whole idea of the brand was, hey, there should be a 100% truthful brand there that says that, hey, the food you're about to eat is made of A, B, C, D, E and nothing else. And that was the moment I was like, oh, let's call it And Nothing Else. We'll be the only brand, as far as we know, that declares all of its ingredients up front. And nothing else will land this with impact. And so it did. Like, the brand took off immediately. Like, people got it. Right? A few months in, apart from product, when we started doing our content on social, on YouTube and Instagram, etc., and that also started exploding, we realized that actually we are doing a lot more than telling you the whole truth of ingredients. We are unmasking the whole truth of legal trickery, the whole truth of claims, the whole truth of how photography trickery is used to mislead you. That's when the second aha moment happened, that actually And Nothing Else, as good a name as it is to describe the product, if we zoom out a little, that's just the whole truth of ingredients. But we want to tell you the whole truth of everything that goes into marketing trickery. And hence, actually our mission is the whole truth.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the umbrella that we need to house both our product and our content ambitions under.
Yeah. And I feel what's interesting about that is I feel that every aspect, and I want to dig into packaging at some point in this chat, because I find it so interesting and exciting that every aspect, including everything I get in the box beyond the product, has something in it. But everything kind of put out, from how you communicate, all the content you put out, all kind of sticks to this one core philosophy. But why foods? Why was healthy food and healthy, this entire category, why was that exciting to kind of start off with? I mean, because if you look at that landscape, it's also been something which you almost had, I would say, relegated to the granola bar lane, is what I used to always call it in the supermarket. You would not have too much more than that. But why was this an area of interest for you? I mean, considering that pre this company as well, you were obviously in a larger conglomerate, everything that's going on there. But why was this specific area what interested you?
Actually, there's a personal and a business answer to it, and the personal, as in reality, preceded the business. So personally, I've had a long journey with fitness. Used to be a really obese kid as a teenager, lost 40 kgs, thought I'm thin now, thought thin is equal to fit. I can, eat like my thin friends, and in 3 months, in 3 years, all of it came back. Then I lost it again. Then again made the same mistake. Again gained back 30 kgs, again lost 30 kgs. So did this plus minus 30 kg cycle thrice in life before I started realizing that shit, there is something severely wrong that's not in my control. Something is going wrong and it's happening wrong to me, which is when I started researching about my food. And I started writing this blog called Fit Shit, which I used to write in my Unilever days as my weekend hustle.
Yeah.
And the company is born out of that blog, where I used to do exactly what we now do at The Whole Truth, which is unmask the lies of the food industry. I could do it much more effectively as an individual, and now I have legal problems to contend with. But that is the crusade, because I've gone through it personally, and I've seen how damaging incorrect claims and supposedly healthy food can be, because you actually end up overeating it because you think, oh, I'm eating healthy, so I can have 4 of these rather than 2 of these. That became a very, very personal crusade to start with food. And within food, why protein bars? A lot of people ask me. The thing is, I just realized I did an article on Fit Shit around protein bars, which really took off. And during the research of that article, I realized it's very easy to make a protein bar. You can make it at home with a mixie and an oven. Don't need any equipment. So I thought, let's try it. And karte, I got to a product which gave me the confidence that, hey, this can be done. You can make absolutely clean food with just 4 or 5 ingredients, and so clean that you can declare on the ingredients on the front of pack, and it is proper packaged food, right? So that was the personal bit that led me to food, because it was very personal, and protein bars because I could do it. And that's, I think, the biggest lesson of entrepreneurship for me is start with what you can do, not with what's the perfect answer, because you'll never start, right? And then the business reason why I stuck to the decision to start with protein bars was, see, as startups, what do we have a lack of? Every resource in the world. Don't have money, can't advertise, don't have people, don't have anything, right? Our only chance in hell is to actually win, contrary to popular opinion, win a very large market share of a very small market, right? Drive that very sharp wedge in the market, that there are these 1,000 people who are going gaga over you. And if these 1,000 people happen to be the fitness micro influencers in their circles, then you've got something going. And who are the people who eat protein bars in our country today? Right? They are most probably your friend who's a gym guy, your friend who's a marathon runner, your friend who's a triathlete. When the brand started winning them over, the thing caught fire.
And the regular person kind of jumps into that and kind of picks it up as well.
Because most of our opinions are actually second-hand opinions that we learn from experts around us. We are, say, you work in the financial industry, your friends look up to you for financial advice. But your friend is a triathlete. You look up to him or her for fitness advice.
Which brings me to a point which I feel every entrepreneur goes through, is that you start off with, okay, this is a problem which I'm personally, have a connection towards, and then you build an entire business hypothesis. Then you start, and then you realize a lot of things about the reality of that market itself. So go back to the first couple of years. What did you quickly realize that what assumptions of yours held true, but also what did you quickly learn about this segment and to grow in it that you earlier hadn't really paid enough attention to?
Actually, my biggest learning, to be honest, on the brand, on the product, on the thesis that people are dying for a brand to come and treat them as intelligent people and not dumb things down and tell them the truth, all of that turned out to be bang on. And how? Like had you asked me that in like 2 years and a few months we'll be the brand that we are today, I would have laughed at that time, right? So all of that actually went to plan. And how it was in the go-to market that I had learnings that like the biggest one was D2C for food is very, very shallow in this country. I don't know of any food brand in this country, packaged food brand, that has been able to scale D2C, so website sales. And the reason for that is actually, in hindsight, very clear that food, unlike personal care or apparel or jewelry, is a very high frequency purchase, but very low average order value, right? So what that means is, in real life, right now your biscuit packet got over when you were having chai and you're like, oh shit, I need biscuit. And you ask someone, go downstairs, get a biscuit, or you call a shop saying biscuit bhej do, right? You don't go to a website, order, wait for 4 days ki biscuit aayega.
Correct.
Right? But shampoo, cream, you're fine. Wo tube khatam hoti dikh rahi hai. You're like,
you order it, by the time you have to twist that toothpaste down, you're going to end up
You're like, I have enough buffer, and it's not a here and now thing, and I don't care much about freshness. Right? So that's why retail is still and will continue to be a huge play in food. And D2C will take a very, very long time, much longer than personal care, to find depth in food.
So then let's look at the broader landscape, right? If you look at this entire healthy food category, if you look at from a broader macro point of view, what for you is the space it's at today? Like even compared to when you started off to now, what has changed? What has kind of scaled up from a business standpoint and a consumer standpoint?
Actually, I have a problem with the word healthy food.
Because food should be healthy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an oxymoron or it's either redundant or oxymoronish, depending on how you look at it. So, and the bigger problem is this word healthy is actually the food marketeer's biggest weapon. Because no one knows what's healthy. Someone thinks it's keto, someone says vegan, someone says low fat, someone says low carb. Whatever is the latest fad is healthy. Right? No one tells you the basics of food. No one says, first of all, eat clean ingredient food which you can recognize.
Correct.
Right? These 4 things I can pronounce. I find them in my kitchen. They are in my food. Great. Right? That's the basic. No one tells you how to read nutrition labels or ingredient lists, etc. Right? So I frankly abstain from talking about healthy food because I feel that by just talking about it, I'm a perpetrator of that same crime. For me, there is clean food and unclean food. Yeah. And I think that a cleaner version of everything, actually the 100% clean version of everything you eat, be it chips or chocolates or protein bars or breakfast cereal, deserves to exist. Because brands are no one to sit in judgment and say, oh, you shouldn't be eating chocolate. No. The same healthy guy who goes to gym in the morning and eats a protein bar, gives in at night and eats a chocolate. It's the same person.
I am that person most times, which is why now I keep yogurt in the fridge.
And all of us are. This is a myth that there is a healthy person and there is a different unhealthy person. It's the same person at different times of day, and if you can keep these two in check, then you are a great person, right? So to answer your question, I think there is huge scope for cleaning up every food category that exists. If we try and force some healthy category down people's throats, that will obviously face a lot of headwinds. Just like, for example, protein bars in India is a 250 crore annual category. That's it. That's how small it is. To give context to people, cookies in India or biscuit cookies, etc. milake in India is the 40-50,000 crore category, right? So that's the gap we're talking about.
And I think what's also interesting about this space, and I love the fact that you said don't call it healthy. So I'm trying to figure a better, I'm going to stick to clean is what I'm stick to, is that your approach to scaling or rather adding in more categories also I thought was very interesting, right? Obviously you started off with the protein bars. The minis, by the way, I'm a constant consumer. My household always has the minis. I like one flavor. Pooja likes a different one. So there's two of those big packets all the time. Then came the spreads and the mueslis around the same time. If
first the mueslis and then 4 months later the spreads. Yeah.
So as you kind of adding those in there, how do you see this without giving away something which you are going to come launch tomorrow? Is there a thought of saying, when this is done, let's move to the next one? Or how do you look at adding in categories?
So our formula is very simple. If you come to my office, you'll see this chart with 3 intersecting circles, a Venn diagram, which is for every food category in the world, we pass it through this filter of one circle is currently, is this category largely populated with unclean food? Like, are the biggest players selling absolute shit to consumers in this category? Next circle is, can we create a product which lives up to the whole truth promise? And third circle is it tasty? In any category where we are able to make these 3 circles intersect, we launch, right? And then we move on to the next part of the crusade. So for us, this is the crusade. Category after category after category, and like we have in the top funnel of this exercise are like 20 categories of packaged food, which is the entire universe. We pass it through this. Usually almost all of them are a take on the first one, that the big guys are selling shit. Then we pick the ones where we believe we have some line of sight to what would a whole truth product look like. Right? So for example, if I gave you the muesli approach example, when we did our research on breakfast cereals, we realized that breakfast across the world is just carbs. Right? So be it dosa, idli, vada, North India mein paratha, cornflakes, everything is just carbs, right? When actually fundamentally in the morning as the first meal, you need your most balanced meal. You need protein, you need fats, you need carbs, right? So that gave us line of sight to, this is what the whole truth version of breakfast should look like, right? Then once we get that clarity, we start the R&D work on it to get to the third circle, it should be tasty, right? And the minute the third circle gets a tick, we go ahead.
At the risk of sounding like someone who literally buys every single category of yours, I start my morning with your muesli. The peanut butter spread comes sometime during the evening. And the bar is also part of my like midday snack at some point of time. The minis though, in that sense. So I think
you're the ideal consumer.
And I'm telling you this from a consumer standpoint, what has been my evolution as a consumer has been the fact that because there's one product that served the needs which I wanted, that I didn't want to add too much sugar into something which I was eating. I also wanted to get something which was tasty yet felt clean. I kept adding every newer thing that came out, let's try it out, let's buy it. So would you say trust is almost the fundamental cornerstone of the brand? Because I know it should be for every brand, but because you know from what you're called to everything else, is that the cornerstone? Is that what is fundamental to it?
Absolutely. When people ask me are you a healthy food company or are you a protein bar company, my answer, which is the truth, is we're a truth company. And wherever we see a food category, and by the way, why should it only be a food category?
Exactly.
Wherever we see a category with a trust deficit, we will apply the whole truth to it because we're a truth company.
And I feel that seeps into how you market as well. I've always found the way you market to be interesting. Because at one point, it's almost like you're educating people about understanding what is healthy and what is clean, which I feel most of us don't understand as much as I think we have so many myths and so many things we've also been taught over time. So I know everything from the academy to the recent one, which was the influencer campaign, which was super fun. How do you approach that side of it? How do you approach the marketing in terms of saying, okay, these are things we're going to do, these are things that will work, so this education, there is this and that. So how does that entire framework function for you?
See, again, small company don't have the resources to make a ad and blast it on TV or do stuff like that. Neither do we wish to, because again, the ads in the traditional sense of the word were literally the problem, that you took the one thing that's good about you and plastered that across town and then hid the remaining 9 behind, right? And then we realized that actually, you know what? If we can just teach people how to think about food and how to read nutrition labels and how to read ingredient lists, our food will sell.
Yep.
If I can educate people on the right framework to use to judge food, then I am happy being judged under that framework with everyone else in the market. I'm 100% confident my brand will win. And if not, if someone comes up and does even better than us, that's great. That's the kind of competition you want, right? That eventually the consumer should win.
Yeah. I like the fact that you said someone should kind of come into it. And there was a recent thing I read, and I feel that really syncs with this thought process, is that if your competitor is working towards the same goal as you are, they're in many ways your teammates and not necessarily your competitors.
Yeah.
And I think that syncs up to, especially when you're working on a philosophy and building out in this sense of the word.
It's only true of purpose-driven brands, right?
Yeah.
Because for us, what matters is the purpose getting fulfilled.
Yeah.
And of course, 10 hands better than 2 in driving towards the purpose.
Have you also had to learn to be a host? Because considering how much of your content involves you, has that been a skill you've had to kind of hone and grow and work on?
Actually, so the good thing is that since college days, I've been into a bit of dramatics, and then I tried my hand at stand-up, etc. Obviously didn't work out really well, but
it gives you the opportunity to pull all those things in.
Yeah, exactly. So, and no one can say ki, you're doing a shit job because it's my company. so that's one way to get comedy freedom, guys. Like start your own company.
Start your own company and make yourself.
And so it's not been that, to be honest, that tough. I've been at it for a while in the background. So even at Unilever conferences, I used to be the standard given joker. My comedy act used to be the way the conference used to end every year. So been on stage for a while, so it's not too uncomfortable for me. But yes, the volume of it really takes a toll. Like the amount we are doing now. But that's the bit that actually outside of creating new products with Rachna, who heads production for us, who's really the soul of the company. This is what drives me the most. So if I had the time, I'd do it all the time.
And considering you mentioned the team, right? When you're working in a larger organization, you look at how you build your team in a very different sense. You know, obviously it's already set in place. Everybody has specific roles and stuff like that. When you're doing a startup, you're literally all hands on deck. Literally at the beginning, just your hands on deck, and then you build. So how is the way you look at building a team, the kind of people you bring in? How is that kind of change, and what do you tend to look for?
So it's a very clear shift from looking for skill to looking for intent. So my entire top team, there are actually now 10 people who report into me, and they're all like 8 out of those 10 are EIRs or entrepreneurs in residence. And the hiring philosophy was very clear that, see, we are not creating a Tesla. We are not solving some hitherto unsolved physics problem that we need PhD scientists for.
Yeah.
Many FMCG companies have been built, retail distribution, marketplaces, all of that are known problems, right? So the problem here is not that there is one big unsurmountable problem. The challenge here is that every day you will face 40 different, highly surmountable, independently but collectively tiring issues, right? The only thing that takes you over 40 hills every day for 10 years on the trot is intent. Yeah. So I look for intent over greater than skill is how we look at it. And skill can be taught, right? And thankfully, I have spent time in the CPG world. So I do get many parts of the business, right? So that's the biggest change. Not looking for people who can come in and, tell us how things are done. Looking for people who can come in and say, whatever it takes, we'll get it done.
I have a bunch more questions to ask you, but I'm assuming we need to go in for a break. I'm used to a chat window popping up at this point of time telling me you are over time, you have not gone for a break. I'm assuming there's a virtual chat window here saying that. So we'll just quickly go for a break and be right back with Advertising is Dead.
सफर, रास्ते, मंजिल और मुकाम अक्सर ये हमसे कुछ कहना चाहते हैं, पर हम हैं कि अपनी रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में इन्हें सुनने से कतराते हैं। नमस्ते दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है केशव चतुर्वेदी और मैं आपको ले चलूंगा कुछ ऐसे सफर पर जहां आपको एक नया नजरिया मिलेगा सफर और मंजिलों को देखने का। आइए इन किस्से कहानियों में डूब जाएं, हर मंगलवार और शुक्रवार।
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're still in our come back into a studio and do a recording, and what a fabulous episode it's been so far. I've always wanted to ask you this. I think I ask every single person who's had professional career in a multinational and then go towards being a startup founder, is that what did you take with you and what did you have to almost unlearn or relearn once you got into startup mode?
So, see, my professional career was in Unilever, right?
Yeah.
Which is a great founding school for marketing 101s, right? So, I think that's what I took with me the most. That I think in hindsight, my focus from day one on having a very clear brand proposition, a very clear insight, from day one spending time, money, energy, resource on brand building, because I've seen the journey of iconic brands like Dove and Surf.
Yeah.
That gave me the lens that if you're playing to win, then the definition of winning here is, even if you have $100 in your pocket, keep 5 rupees aside for content and brand building, etc. Because that truly is the only long-term moat that you're building. So I think that's the biggest thing that I took. What I had to leave behind was almost everything else here, because the lack of resources really hits you, right? No team member around to you say the strategy and someone else will go and execute. There's none.
You learn admin and finance,
everything, right?
Yeah.
And from the very the first month, I was running around trying to lock in a 1,000 square feet Gala ka lease. To put our first production facility come office in, and the first lease that we signed was in July of 2019, and we were going to pay the deposit. We said जाते हुए एक बारी गाला देख के आते हैं. पिछले दिन was the heaviest rain day of Bombay. The thing was submerged in hip deep water, right? So that shit you've never faced in a big company, right? So the big
I think every Bombay startup has that one hip deep in water story. I remember we had an office which was in Warsaw, which was at some point of time, luckily the tables were higher than the water came to. So weirdly enough, a couple of hard disks were left which were saved, but I totally relate with that.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say that I've very happily left behind is trying to find whose fault it was. I find it to be supremely liberating that जो है मेरा है, जो अच्छा है वो मेरा है, जो बुरा है वो मेरा है, and I have to spend not an iota of my time thinking जब कुछ खराब हुआ, the first thought in back in a big company used to be, oh fuck, whose fault is this? Because it can't be mine. So I need to find who this lands on, right? And the first thought here is, how do we fix this? I think that's super liberating.
Also, it stops you from, I think we all try to play safe, but it stops you from playing too safe, right? You're not covering your behind, for lack of a better term, all the time. Because I don't think it's unfortunate, but I feel in larger organizations, it's bound to happen, because people are going to, there is going to be structure, there's going to be, politics comes in once you cross a certain number of people, I think, in any organization. So,
think it's structural, right? The feedback loop in a big company is very delayed. You keep on doing bad behaviors and you might still keep rising, and it might catch up with you maybe in 10 years. In startup, you do bad behavior, you will die. The company will die in 6 months. Then what's the point of explaining किसकी गलती थी? भाई कंपनी बंद हो चुकी है, जिसकी भी गलती थी doesn't really matter. Right? So I think the feedback loop is so immediate that made a bad decision, money went down in bank. Made a bad hire, culture has gone to shit. You can see it in front of your eyes, right? So I think it's just structural, because see, I was the same person that I was in a big company, but my behaviors were different.
Yeah.
It becomes very clear that your context has a huge role to play in how you behave. Even when you're the same person, I'm a live case. I was for 11, 12 years in a large company, and now I am running my own company. I'm the same person. I can't have changed too much.
Yeah.
But my behaviors are entirely different.
What I think is also interesting is that, and you mentioned this earlier, right, is that from a manufacturing standpoint, the tendency, especially when you start off D2C in many cases, is to almost figure a way to outsource the manufacturing, right? Work with an external partner, do some of those. Was that ever a thought? Was that ever, were you always like, no, this has to be the most controlled aspect?
To be honest, it was a thought because I don't come from a food background. Even in Unilever, I worked in personal care, never in food. So I was very scared. And food manufacturing is scary, right?
Yeah.
खाने के साथ कुछ हो गया, किसी का बाल गिर गया, कुछ पेन आ गया, like shit can happen which can really harm both people and your brand, right? So it was very scary. So initially went to a few third-party guys to speak to them. But within 2 meetings, it became so clear that every conversation was, listen, you guys are nobodies. Hence, I am not going to do anything out of my way for you.
Yeah.
This is my machine. If your product can fit this machine, please come. If your product can't fit this machine, I am not going to change my machine to fit your product.
Correct.
Right? So, and 2 meetings, literally 2 meetings, and it gave me the clarity that this is actually the source of the packaged food problem. If everyone is getting their food made from
the same guys,
there can't be differentiation.
Yeah.
If there is no differentiation, but you have to still prove there is differentiation, the only way is to lie. And hence marketing has to take over and, put 0.1% turmeric and say with the goodness of turmeric and shit like that.
Yeah.
Because that's the only change you can do. The guy will only make what his machine makes. That gave me the clarity that while it's going to be extremely tough and by God, the production and scale up has been so tough, but it's so rewarding. Like that is... now when people say, you to write your recipe on the front of pack, anyone will copy. I'm like, please be my guest. Please come in. Like we've put up a 3D map of our facility on our website. You can actually go and see the entire facility, walk through it in 3D with all processes, everything right there. So forget about recipe. I'm showing you my process to all my competitors also. Please copy it. And you will have to go through that same path. And if you can, and if you're so committed, please do it.
I think that also that's the only way. I think transparency is so underrated as something that you should do as organizations, right? And I think there's value to that, because the more transparent you are and the less you have to hide, the less someone's worrying about, okay, is this person hiding something? But have you been asked the other end saying, is this all true? Or is there I'm sure there's something that you're not being transparent. How many times have you been asked that question?
शुरू में होता था. Off late, I can't remember even one incident. And I think that's the true win of every, like internally also, like one of our values as a company is also the whole truth, right? That everyone in the company understands that no matter how good a con artist you are, you can't keep up a facade for 20 years.
Correct.
Right? So only way the whole truth remains the whole truth if on the other side, on the inside also, it is the whole truth.
Yeah.
Right? So thankfully, not off late. शुरू में people had this doubt कि तुम भी पूरा थोड़ी बता रहे होगे.
There is a pet peeve I have about your brand, which is the fact that I try to always find things beyond the product when I order it off your D2C site. And I always found, because I have not seen too many brands try to say even the shredded paper that is inside the box has some element of something around the brand in it. You also get that booklet, there's a lot of that stuff. So how has that part was this almost like, okay, this is something why is no one using this, almost like white space? Or how did that part evolve?
I think that's just, again, the kind of people we are, and maybe a large part of that flows from me too, that like we just love storytelling. So like from day one, I used to feel that, it's such a missed opportunity. Actually, I'll tell you my exact reference. I was like, everyone posts unboxing videos of phones. Why not of food?
That's true, actually.
Right? Because somehow when food gets delivered and food is very high involvement, right? It is, you are really passionate about your food. But वो आता है तो वही एक बस गत्ते के डब्बे में everyone puts it and throws it in a box and sends it to you. And like such a missed opportunity, यार मतलब. And then on top of that was the thing of, dude, when I don't have any advertising money, I have nothing. Any touch point I'm getting with the consumer, I'm going to max it out. Like I'm going to, at least from my side, give you an experience that you can't forget you're talking to 10 people about it. So when you open that box, like there's a whole world that's going to emerge outside of just the bars. And by the way, still in that box, if I talk in money terms, 95% of the cost is the bars. So you're literally talking about 5% extra cost. Right? But that just elevates the experience so much. So like it frankly came very, very naturally to me that ये तो मतलब बेवकूफी है. If you're sending food just by throwing 6 bars in a box, you're really missing an opportunity.
And I remember the first time I think the first time which actually I realized it, because I think oftentimes we also used to picking something up and throwing it. I don't think I realized it the second time when someone I knew had purchased and spoke to me about it. I'm like, one second, I bought it all the time. Why have I not paid more attention? And then I now it's a constant point to kind of go back to. And I think for me the big learning, like you said, is that it's just so much space for storytelling which you have just wasted, which you could kind of use, which can be so interesting. I mean, I can think of how every single brand can kind of use it.
Why don't they? Like, again, this is one of the, I don't know, someone has made the effort of coming to your website, giving you $600, said, I will try you. You're sending a box to their home now. The deal is done. Right? This is the other example that I always keep telling my team is, don't behave like movie theaters behave with people, where when you're coming in, everything is shiny and hunky-dory and great. But the exit route is shit. Right? That now that we've taken your money, go screw yourself.
It's so true. I know so many theaters like that. It's not funny.
All of them are like exit.
Sometimes you come out and you feel like
it's a dungeon. मतलब दीवारों से पेंट उतर रहा है और आप चढ़े 3 फ्लोर थे लेकिन उतर 6 फ्लोर रहे, समझ में नहीं आ रहा कि क्या चल रहा है, right? So I'm like, don't behave like that with just because they have now given you your money, their money, it doesn't mean कि अब 6 बार कोई डब्बे में फेंक के भेज दो उनके पास. Like, can you like deliver a wow where they were not expecting it? And by the way, those are the wows which stay with people the most.
And I feel what's also an interesting aspect is that also makes, and I know earlier on you said, right, is that it's always going to physical and D2C physical is always going to be a large player. But I feel things like these push you to purchasing online more. If you make it a habit in that sense, and you also experience some of these aspects, some of the experience, and I've noticed this as a consumer, and I've just generally, I ask people across categories, and a lot of people are like, the more they've had to purchase by force in recent times because of the pandemic and shutdowns, there is in some of these spaces, you actually feel happier to just buy it online. You just have to remember maybe 4 days before and not necessarily on that day. But I feel that's happening more and more as a consumer. But is there a way to bring this aspect in the same kind of impact you feel when it's in a physical store?
So let me answer the first thing. So yes, of course, the online space and the number of people buying online is growing. There is no doubt about it, right? And by the way, while I said retail will always be very important for a food brand, for the first 12 months, we were a purely website only brand. We didn't even go to an Amazon, etc. for the first 12 months, right? Exactly for this reason, because at the beginning, I wanted to deliver the full force of the brand experience to whoever bought the brand. Right? And then dheere dheere open up distribution. Right? The problem is that, and I guess it's a problem for us VC funded brands who need to grow at a certain pace to justify the venture capital money that we've taken, that the pace of growth of online consumer is not enough for us to grow with. A, and B, I also feel, we a lot of times say that for us, our brand is far greater than our revenue. So the number of people who know of the brand positively are far greater than the number of people who've bought it. And the largest reason is availability. That, I just didn't have the time or I forgot. But I was in Nature's Basket the other day. Had the brand been there, I would have picked it up. Right? So I think these are not either ors. Every channel has their role to play. And for a startup, there's a sequence, I believe, in which you should do this. I believe you should start with D2C, deliver the full brand promise, get the micro influencer folks who are buying your brand to go gaga over it because of everything, the pack, the experience, etc. Let that word of mouth trickle down to more people, and then followed up with more distribution. Right now, your second point: can the same experience be delivered in a physical store? I doubt the same experience can be delivered, but physical store offers you other things to do. For example, you can do wet sampling. I can get you to try the product before you buy it. Can't do it in online.
Yeah.
I can. So one of the things we're hoping to be able to experiment with is there are these promoters that you put in stores. We also put them now that we're going to retail stores, but they're always such pushy salesmen who are always in your face. Buy this, why don't you try this? Right? What if the promoter can actually be someone who tells you that I'm actually not selling you anything, I just want to take 2 minutes to tell you that when you turn the packet or any food packet, the ingredient list is listed in the order of constitution. So the first ingredient is the largest ingredient in that packet of food. Just learn this one simple rule, ma'am, and now you're buying protein bars. Please go and see all the protein bars, right? And then pick whichever one you think is right.
Or have someone holding a board which says, I will only tell you the truth.
So we call them truth speakers.
Yeah.
So these physical world allows you much more intimate conversations, allows you physical touch feel, but not unboxing experience and the feeling of getting a gift. That it can't.
I think that's also the beauty of the hybrid space we find ourselves, right? Is that there's obviously been a push to people doing a lot more D2C, and now with things opening up, there is that physical is obviously now suddenly consumers are kind of going back into stores and going back, and I think the supermarket never really went away, the store never really went away, but I feel that now it's a combined experience, and the fact that the consumer wins, right? They have choice. They can do this online if they remember. If they don't remember, they can go up to a store and get it.
Yeah, I think the shopper journey basically has become a lot more multi-dimensional and complex. So all of the following scenarios are possible. You saw a brand's ad on Facebook, checked out their website, forgot about them. Next time we're in the store, saw them, picked them up. Or you were in a store, you saw a new brand, found it interesting, but didn't want to try it yet. Went back home, saw an ad, went to the website and bought it. Both these are very possible.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a very multi-dimensional shopper journey now. And hence the marketeer's job is even tougher to make sure that at every touch point, your brand is consistent. Because if the consistency breaks, then you're gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually what my next question was going to be, saying how does the role of a marketer then change, and what all, if I was a marketer today, if I'm a professional today in this space, right? What are the skills I need to have, both not just from like these are skill sets I need to function as a professional, but also like from a mindset perspective, what are the skill sets that you feel is so important, especially in this kind of an environment?
I actually think that the skills of running digital media campaigns and optimizing that, or knowing how to do marketplace listings, etc., are actually fairly learnable. And you'll find courses, people, consultants, etc., agencies who will do it for you. I think the real skill for the marketeer of today is your ability to play on information arbitrage is going away, which is what the marketeer of yore used to do. That लोगों को झूठ बोल दूंगा, उनको पता कैसे लगेगा?
Correct.
कि मैंने झूठ बोला. Right? That is going away. That information asymmetry is now highly gone. One guy posts something, within 5 minutes, your entire consumer base knows about it. You're gone.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the unlearning required is the consumer is not dumb. Right? And of course, I'm making a generalization. India is, as we know, 100 countries. It's not one. So you can't make a statement about India. I'm talking about maybe the metro dwelling, once or twice in life has traveled internationally, English speaking, nuclear household sort of consumer, let's say sitting in the top 15, 20 cities of India. This consumer is watching Netflix documentaries, is hearing about veganism and keto and is as up to date about trends as anyone sitting in San Francisco or London is, right?
Yeah.
Your ability to lie to them has gone. So don't unlearn that. Treat your consumer as intelligent and treat them the way you would like to be treated. So actually, I think in a way, this information age is going to take us back to the authenticity of brands. And that is why actually you see some of the best brands are the ones where the founder's identity is very heavily seeped into the brand's identity. Because that's the only way to be consistent.
Yeah.
I am who I am. And hence, hopefully, till the time I am alive, I will keep saying what I say. And if that's what the brand also says, it's consistent.
Yeah. Speaking of you are what you are, I want to bring this to the last segment of the show, which is generally slightly more random, slightly more fun, not talking about work at all. If you weren't what you are today, what would you be? What profession would you have chosen if it was not an entrepreneur, marketer, and everything that goes with it?
A writer / stand-up comic.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have been a good one, but that's what I would be trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know the answer to the next one, so I'm going to add an extra element to it. What do you spend a lot of time doing outside of work that takes a lot of your time? You can't say fitness because I know that's the core focus. So you can talk about that, but you got to give me two because I know the answer to one.
The very, very honest answer is last 2.5 years, my life is literally sometime at home with the wife and a now very young puppy, sometime in the gym and everything else at work. So to be really honest, and I know it's not the best answer because entrepreneurs are supposed to also have great, I have interests outside of work, etc.
Entrepreneurs don't have time.
Abhi to nahi hai. So for the last 2.5 years,
you mentioned puppy, so I will count that as the second one.
That I need to take out some time for, but that's it.
Yeah.
So work every waking hour apart from the 2 hours at night, dinner and post dinner, some content scene with the wife and spend some time with the puppy. That's pretty much life right now.
And I know even this one. So these are all new. I'm adding new variations to this last segment. I realized a lot of guests have heard the episodes. I'm changing up some stuff and adding questions here. And you can't mention the podcast you already have hosted. If you had to host a podcast, what would it be called?
Oh, but I already have a podcast.
No, but that's a company podcast. I will technically call that the company podcast. But if you had to...
And the truth comes out?
That's a good one. You've actually taken... what is already a podcast, but you've evolved it. Okay, fair enough. I will give you that one. I threw that one in there. But I cannot not ask you the question I've asked every single guest so far.
Or maybe call it Don't Lie.
Don't Lie. Now, Don't Lie is a good one. But actually, no. The first one sounds like a murder mystery.
Exactly.
First it's
like Agatha Christie sort of.
It's gone like... I think this one actually makes more sense. So... we're going to have a list of, I'm just turning to Jalasini, producer, and saying that we're going to have a list of shows we can hopefully steal names of eventually. What can you put together in an instant?
Oh, I can put together rhyming lines and a poem in an instant.
Weirdly, haven't got that before. I don't think I have. I don't think anybody has. I don't think rhyming lines, poetry has come before, but...
I don't know. It'll be a stretch to call it poetry. But I'm very good at it. Give me direction and give me one line and I'll make a rhyme scheme out of it. Don't ask me to do it right now. But
no, I'm not. Anything you've watched, listened to or read recently that you'd recommend?
Oh, yeah. Read a few things. Read Factfulness about a year or so back. Really changed my, reminded me how much bias we live with because of popular opinion. And I've always had this feeling that a lot of us spout a lot of second-hand opinion. Stuff we have no knowledge, no experience of, but just because you have to make small talk at a party, we say shit. Right. So that's why actually I think over time I've become very silent at parties and stuff because I just can't talk about things that I don't know about. And Factfulness is a book that brings that to light that, data disproves most of the things about the world that we believe in. That's one that popped into my head.
There's actually a book which could be a good follow-up to it. I think it's called The Death of Expertise. It talks about how, and it's a weird parallel across the world, how people who are experts are nowadays not looked at in the best light. Like, if you're an expert and you have a point of view, like, how do you, like, it's still like, how do you know? Even though, like, I'm an expert, like, but how do you know? So I think there's a book called The Death of Expertise, which is, I think, almost like it can be a sister concern of the book you read.
Oh, wow. I'll read that too.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying something.
So outside of Factfulness, then I tried to get back to some fiction reading. Used to love fiction, but time is so limited in life now that you're like, must derive value out of every book I read. So got back to fiction, and the name is skipping my mind. Suddenly, it's this, The Three-Body Problem, which is a science fiction book, like a classic science fiction book. And oh my God, like, it's amazing. So if there are any sci-fi lovers out there, I'm sure you've heard of The Three-Body Problem. So I read Asimov a few years back and loved it. And then The Three-Body Problem is just another level. And I realized that, fiction is so, it's become so tough to read fiction for me now. Like, I can't concentrate. I keep getting distracted. But once I do get into the flow, I get into flow with fiction. I'm no longer in a transactional relationship with my book where every 5 pages I'm wondering, isse maine kya seekha?
What do I highlight?
Correct. Which of this can go as a tweet, as something that I learned and shit.
Story of my life.
You just, I loved so The Three-Body Problem. It's a trilogy. It's one of the best sci-fi out there.
I think also the best way to actually consume fiction as well lately, I've realized, is actually fiction podcasts. I've slowly started to do that a lot more. Just listen to like a story and at some point pause and go.
Not tried.
I've gotten hooked on to the Marvel ones. So there's an entire Wolverine series with a couple of seasons in, which is like, and it's also like, the sound design, you feel like in the middle of like cinematic one is, and a bunch of others. So I've actually been hooked onto that part. So I like how I'm throwing recommendations back at you.
This is great. I remember there's this new serial, not new anymore, about murder in the building or something.
This is the one of the Only Murders in the Building, which is the one on Hotstar.
Which is about
they're all making a crime podcast. So true crime podcasts are like obviously the biggest genre in podcasts.
And I haven't tried those either at all.
Yeah. I think I listen to, I watch only family stuff these days. So I have moved away from anything crime or dark in that sense. And on that note, I thanks a ton for coming on the podcast. I'm happy we finally did this. I'm finally could talk about just like what you're building, because I think it stands out because at the core of it, it stands for the philosophy, it stands for trust, and you're building everything else on top of that. And I'm a happy consumer, and hence I want to say that I'm happy we could do this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, it's a massive privilege to be able to get up every day and build something that means so much to oneself. So I think I count that as a huge privilege. And thank you so much for having this chat.
Awesome, and that's it for this episode of Advertising is Dead. If you like this podcast and you want to listen to more podcasts like this, head over to the IVM Podcast website or app or wherever you get your podcast from and look at all the podcasts that IVM makes. There's some really fun stuff there.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Voices for Water, Karthik introduces us to Debashish Mukherjee, the Additional Secretary for the Department of Water Resources. He asks her about the Indian government's approach to participatory water management. On The Habit Coach, Ashton speaks to Priyanka Acharya, the host of our newest show, Ek Chuski Finance. She explains how women can start developing micro-habits to manage their finances. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth lists down 3 lessons we can learn from American comedian Andrew Schultz. On Cyrus Says Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Ayushi, Antriksh and I get together. We discuss how every single news channel claims to be number 1. And on Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurabh contemplate whether economic growth contributes to prosperity in light of India being ranked 136th on the World Happiness Index. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. Also, remember, we're on YouTube. You can check us out on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube and get a list of all the YouTube channels we have active at this point. I'd also like to make a quick note that we're doing a small listener survey, and it would really help us if you could fill that out. You can go to ivmpodcast.com/survey. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance and India Water Portal. Thank you so much for making this possible.
You're the people pleaser, right?
Oh, yes.
Or then desperately seeking the one? Oh wait, you're the one who doesn't think they're ever good enough.
Oh.
So much drama. And for what? Is it doing you any good? Listen to me. I'm Chetna, your favorite positive action coach. Yes, I'm the one who has been dropping all those truth bombs on every episode.
Oh no.
And it's time you learn to say no to drama. That's also what my podcast is called. And a new episode